Boy, oh boy, today is gonna be difficult. Not just for you, for me too. Because I am the one who has to explain all this stuff in a plus minus clear way, as if life wasn't already difficult enough. But just in case I'm going cuckoo in the middle of the video, you can look up for a clear explanation in books like Neuroplasticity, Incognito, The Secret Lives of the Brain, and any kind of physics manual. And yes, today we are mixing up very deep neuropsychology, physics, and also user experience. What for? Art, history, inclusivity, and society. We are translating meaning into touch, sound, and color. And to do that, we are just using very simple AI instruments. Instruments with free access for everyone. And that's mainly why I'm sharing this workflow. Because if more people get excited about this idea, increasing the numbers of results, we are increasing the possibilities for a better result. This is all part of the main idea that I'm trying to pursue through all the previous videos and through this one. Resumed to the extreme, enhancing real human interaction and communication in culture. The real why of this exercise is accessibility. I know, everything done here is still very questionable, especially if we are going to consider very deep and philosophical aspects like what's the real meaning of a painting or the idea the artist had while painting it. I love this kind of discussions, but maybe not right now. For now, we're only going in technical aspects, not philosophical. Let's begin with remembering some simple concepts as waves. If you're a scientist, please bear with it now. I'm not going into frequency or amplitude or any specific details on waves. I know there is a lot to consider, but I also know for a lot of people it is very difficult. Me included, and I don't want to make a mess. So let's keep it slightly simplified. As you probably remember from literally any light physics introduction, the length of a light wave defines the color you're perceiving. The length of a sound wave defines the sound you hear. Another magical fact is that your brain cells too communicate through synchronized electrical pulses. So, electricity. Okay, processing. So, mental states could be too translated in waves. Are you already beginning to guess how does it apply to art? Let's take for example this painting. It looks bright and cheerful, but it was painted by Van Gogh while he was in a hospital. As you can guess, not such a bright and cheerful place. So we have two factors, the emotional and the color. You may say, but I can see the color and I can learn the story, so why do I need anything else? But are you sure everyone can see it? Or are you sure you're seeing it correctly? There are different categories of perception, and there are different categories of people, of course. Some do not perceive colors. Some are completely blind. Some see with their eyes, but might have some problems inside the brain. So the brain, this magic machine, tries to find new ways to explore the world around. For example, usually people with sight limitations develop very accurate senses, perception of sounds, smells, and orientation in space. But of course there are very different cases. And some people are adapted because maybe they were born with some kind of problem or they became blind in early childhood. But some people lose their abilities very slowly after an injury or chemical intoxication, for example. In any case, it obviously never makes a person less of a human. And as humans, we are blessed to enjoy culture, art, and knowledge. And no one, as human, should be excluded. I get it. Especially Italian museums don't care at all about accessibility. They would never think about more ways of engagement for more kinds of people. And we can try to justify them saying that yes, it's expensive, but coming up with new ways of translating art, not just the usual Braille codes, is actually not expensive at all. You just have to come out with a few right inputs. So what are we doing now? We are opening Google Gemini or Gemini, potato, however you want. But instead of just beginning with idea descriptions, first of all you have to set it. In my case, I set it to work as prompt engineer, but it doesn't mean this is the right way. You can also set it to work as different kinds of engineers or UI experts, as professionists in biology or chemistry. And then you begin with a meticulous description of what you have in mind. And when I say meticulous, I mean meticulous. AI only looks like magic, but it actually is just a language learning model. So it learns from language. Sincerely yours, Captain Obvious. Of course, you can always use the shortcut by describing something very, very brief and eventually ask for an extended version, specifying in which AI model you will later insert it. But please don't think that it's simple, because it's not. You still have to think a lot about what you are writing, and the original idea has to come from you. Another little trick, if I can call it so, which I always use, is to write something like this. You will see that after the first response, Gemini will understand it didn't do the perfect job. In case you are an incredibly lazy person and you really don't want to read all the very long prompt it came out with, the only thing you can do is just double checking all the formulas. In this case, there are a lot of them, but they're very logical. And most of them are not that difficult. Always remember AI has something called hallucinations, but strangely, if you write in the initial prompt, do not hallucinate, somehow it hallucinates less. Once everything is set, it's of course very good to try out different approaches. With this particular app, I had kinda a lot of choice, and in fact, I made several applications. My first attempt was just general experimentation, where I have tried to unify all of the waves, the brain wave, the sound wave, the color, and ask Gemini to show it right in the app. But of course, when you ask too much, it is more difficult for the machine. And the risk is that it won't really execute all of the commands correctly. And I made something which is usual for all the arts. Well, at least digital arts. And I sincerely hope that if you have studied art or design, your professors have told you about it. Some people call this drawing out. In the first phases of your workflow, you just take everything you can. Information, inspiration, all possible sources. But at a certain point, what you do is taking them away, one by one, until you don't see something clear and immediate. We always tend to exaggeration, even in minimalism. Hoping to be understood, we often over-explain, like I always do. Over-explanation is never good, especially talking about user experience design. If during a task your user doesn't understand what to do, it doesn't mean you have to explain. It means you have to find a way which will feel natural to them. It's actually pretty much the same with AI. Sure, you have to be very clear and explain in first steps, but at a certain point, especially Gemini, will voluntarily try to forget about some of the parts, because it's really hard for it to keep up with everything. And now think about it. If it is too hard for a huge language learning model, are you sure it won't be too hard for your average user? In this particular context, I'm also talking about attracting different kinds of people in museums. Not just physical inclusivity, but also educational inclusivity. Once again, people are different and come from different walks of life. So maybe some of them are not very cultured people. Maybe some don't have a very good grasp with science. It doesn't mean they're not good enough. It doesn't mean that they don't deserve to see art. Upon research, I've realized we don't have a term to define the difference between this category of people, which unfortunately still exists, who are ignorant by choice, and people who are not provided with even minimal tools, but still really want to learn. But I honestly find that both kinds of people need to be guided slowly, and most of all with empathy. That's why I'm not talking about salons online, internet cafes which will feel distant. I don't want to create a community of snobs, people with their noses high because they know so much. The only thing I know is that I don't know. Also because let's consider that the majority of us have internet at home, even countries with terrible infrastructure, even extremely poor individuals. If you're watching this, it means you have access to internet at least for 10 minutes of your day. Yet the usage I see, especially in people who are clearly not that highly educated, even though I know it's not so good to draw conclusions just by looking at a person, but they are still using such a wonderful tool, internet, only to watch silly videos and TikToks. Culture is there. It's passing through every one of us. Just like the thousands of electromagnetic waves, which we can't even perceive. So art and culture needs to be shared and seen and heard in every possible way. Even if sometimes you really lose faith and hope in humanity. The key word here was sometimes. That's why I will continue, even if no one cares about it, to share more projects. And maybe if someone is interested to go deeper into previous ones. I hope you liked this kind of prompting video. And as always, thank you very much for your patience and have a good day, night, or whatever. And take care.